And welcome back to EDH Deck Building. I am your host, Demo, and I gathered a few commanders that I think have gotten a lot better over the last year or so. So what does that mean exactly? I think there's been a lot of cards coming out in the last year that are very helpful, particularly to certain archetypes, and a lot of commanders out there that have been flying under the radar that don't really have a lot of support for what they were doing now have a lot more support, and maybe people could take a look at them. And of course, I'm talking about the underwhelming commanders, the ones that don't see a lot of play. Obviously, all of the really powerful, popular commanders have probably gotten a lot of support as well, but I want to concentrate on the less popular ones because a lot of them have gotten a lot better with some of the cards they've come out with in the last year, and I would like them to maybe get a revisit from some people. So I'm going to start out with Etrata the Silencer. 2 blue, black, vampire assassin, 3/5, can't be blocked. Whenever Etrata deals combat damage to a player, exile target creature that player controls, then put a hit counter on that card. That player loses the game if they own 3 or more exiled cards with hit counters on them. Shuffle Etrata into its owner's library. So I am mentioning this commander for one reason and one reason only. That is because of Mari, the Killing Quill, which we just got from New Capenna. And the reason why is because it's dealing with hit counters and exiling creatures, right? It's doing the same ability. So just because of this one card, Etrata has gotten a lot better, right? Mari says whenever a creature an opponent controls dies, exile it with a hit counter on it. So with Etrata, it is looking at creature cards exiled with hit counters on them. So just because of Mari, Etrata has gotten a lot better. You can very easily just one-shot your opponents with your commander now. I will also give a mention to the dice rolling commanders that came out in the original Forgotten Realms D&D set. There was a couple of them. I didn't think they were that great because there wasn't a lot of dice rolling support. And of course, we got a whole bunch more dice rolling stuff in this last Commander Legends set, Battle for Baldur's Gate. So now these commanders have probably gotten a lot better. So maybe go back and take a look at some of them. Next up, I'm going to talk about Heliod, God of the Sun, but there is probably a lot of commanders that will fit into this category, okay? Heliod, 3 and a white, legendary enchantment creature, god, 5/6 with indestructible as long as your devotion to white is less than 5. Heliod isn't a creature. Other creatures you control have vigilance, but most importantly has this ability to white, put a 2/1 white cleric enchantment creature token onto the battlefield. That ability is the ability you're going to want to build around with this guy. This guy's obviously very unpopular, even though having an indestructible enchantment commander is pretty darn good. As everyone knows, they're tough to get off the table a lot of the times, and you could very easily build around that ability, especially with all the support we've gotten. With tokens, I mean, first of all, Welcoming Vampire is a phenomenal fit here, right? Because you can create those tokens on anyone's turn and draw a card off of it. More importantly, though, all the if you created a token this turn, right? There's been a ton of token support in the last year. So maybe revisiting some of these commanders, especially the ones in white, because we got cards like Benny Brax and Elaine Harbry's Busybody that just came out in Battle for Baldur's Gate, right? 3 and a white human peasant, 2/4, tap. Look at the top X cards of your library where X is the number of tokens you created this turn. Put one of those cards in your hand and the rest on the bottom of your library in random order. I don't know how much this card's flying under the radar. I think it's phenomenal. It's an auto-include in any token creation deck because even if you just create one token, this is tap draw card. That's fantastic, right? So any of the token creation commanders in white, Akim, the Soaring Wind is another one where I think it's gotten a lot better, again, because of the Welcoming Vampire, but also because of the token creation support in white. Just drawing cards is not going to be a problem in an Akim deck at all, I think. That's a commander that I think has gotten a lot better. Obviously, very underwhelming when it first came out, but it's gotten a ton of support in the last year or so. Might be a good one to revisit. Maverin Fane that I just did on my Underwhelming Commander series, and I put Benny Brax in there. Hadn't seen the Busybody one yet. Creating that 1/1 vampire token with lifelink every turn is not great. You add in the Welcoming Vampire, you add in the Benny Brax, and all of a sudden, creating that 1/1 token gets a lot better. Let's talk about counters themes. So Nils, Discipline Enforcer. A lot of people poo-pooed on this guy when he first came out. I think he's pretty interesting. We've also gotten a lot of counter support in the last year. So Nils is 2 and a white human cleric 2/2 at the beginning of your end step. For each player, put a +1/+1 counter on up to one target creature that player controls. Each creature with 1 or more counters on it can't attack you or a planeswalker you control unless it's its controller pays X, where X is the number of counters on that creature. So again, I'm mentioning him specifically because he's a very underwhelming commander that doesn't see a lot of play because he probably didn't have a ton of support when he first came out. Obviously, there's a lot of other +1/+1 counter commanders out there that are also going to get that same support. But again, I want to mention the ones that don't see a lot of play because maybe now people can go back and they're a little more viable. We got a lot of great counter support recently, especially in New Capenna. There was a bunch of great white cards in particular from New Capenna that are support for the counter theme just in general. So a commander like Nils gets a lot better. Anna Fenza Tree Spirit, another very unpopular, underwhelming commander. Whenever another non-token creature enters the battlefield under your control, you bolster one, which means you put a +1/+1 counter on the creature with the least toughness. So again, another mono white commander in the +1/+1 counter theme that before there wasn't a ton of support for that. Now there's a whole lot more, like Lae'zel Vlaka's Champion, right? Again, another mono white counter support creature, right? Again, this is a commander itself, but can go in the 99 of a lot of these decks, like a lot of these background commanders can, obviously, right? If you would put one or more counters on a creature or planeswalker you control, put that many +1 of each of those kinds of counters on that permanent player instead. So this is a doubling season type of effect for mono white, right? This is an effect that you can now put in any of those mono white decks where you're dealing with counters, or I guess any deck where you're dealing with counters, but particularly in the mono white ones. Next up, we got Fane the Broker. 2 and a black human warlock 3/3. Tap, sacrifice a creature, put 2 +1/+1 counters on target creature. Tap, remove a counter from a creature you control, create a treasure token. Tap, sacrifice an artifact, create a 2/1 white and black inkling creature token with flying, and you can pay 3 and a black, untap Fane the Broker. So this is a commander, when it came out, I was like, man, it's doing a lot, which is great, but how do you actually build it? Is there enough support to build a deck around this? It's very unpopular, as I thought it probably would be. Goes in the 99 of a lot of decks. I've put this guy in the 99 of so many decks already because he's doing so much. But again, because he is doing so much, I really think it's worth going and looking at a lot of the cards we've got recently, because you're doing a sacrifice theme, you're doing a +1/+1 counter theme. So you're putting counters on stuff again, removing counters from stuff, which is interesting. You're creating treasure tokens. We've got a lot of treasure token support recently. You're sacrificing artifacts and you're creating tokens. You're doing so much here that, again, with all the cards that we've had come out in the last year or so, there's probably a ton of interesting cards that would fit with this guy. So this would be a really good one if people are interested to go back and look at and see if there's a lot of interesting cards that now would help him out with what he's doing. Next up, we got Haidar, Rhyme Wind Master, and this is an interesting one. Very old, very unpopular card. 4 and a blue human wizard 3/3. Pay 2 and tap, return target permanent to its owner's hand. Play this ability only if you control 4 or more snow permanents. So this is a snow commander. It was actually the original one. Even though it's not snow itself, the original commander that cares about snow permanents. Returning a permanent to owner's hand, that's pretty good. A lot of ways you can use that. And again, we got a lot of support last year for this. There wasn't a lot of support in mono blue for doing a snow tribal theme. Now we got a lot more. We got a bunch of cards in Kaldheim for snow permanents and snow support. And then we got some more in Modern Horizons 2 that also will support a mono blue snow permanents theme. So again, another commander that I'm sure a lot of people have never even seen before that actually has got quite a bit of support in the last year. Might want to take a look at it. Next up, we got Squee Goblin Nabob. 2 and a red Goblin 1/1. At the beginning of your upkeep, you may return Squee Goblin Nabob from your graveyard to your hand. So very sort of underwhelming ability. Obviously, this is a very unpopular commander. Why am I talking about this one? Well, because I think we've gotten a lot of really great mono red discard support in the last year or so, and that's what Squee is fantastic for. If you're playing a discard theme in red, I think Squee is an auto include, because obviously you can discard him to some effect, and then on your upkeep, he goes right back into your hand so that you can discard him again. Now, if he's your commander, obviously he's going to be in the command zone, but that's not a problem. You just cast him, let him die, maybe you can sack him, whatever, chump block with him, he goes to your graveyard, and then the cycle begins, right? It's not that hard to start getting that cycle going. So in a mono red discard theme, I think he's actually a pretty good commander, because you're always going to have your commander available to discard to some of those effects. And like I said, we got a lot of cards recently that are great in a mono red discard theme. Next up, I got Joriel Wunvali Recluse. 1 and a green human druid 1/2. Whenever you draw your second card each turn, create a 2/2 green cat creature token. And you can pay 4 green until end of turn. Creatures you control have base power and toughness XX, where X is the number of cards in your hand. So people might be thinking I'm talking about this because green got a lot of great card draw in the last year. I mean, probably before that, it was probably a few years ago that green started getting great card draw. And then yes, all that does work here. This is a commander that I've already talked on my underwhelming commanders series. It's nice to see that it actually has gotten a little bit more popular since I talked about it. I don't know if I'm to blame for that or not. Nevertheless, though, I'm mostly talking about this because it is creating those cat tokens, and green has also got a lot of support in the token creation theme in the last year as well. So again, this is sort of a bit of a placeholder. We could go even more underwhelming and talk about Ovaya Pashiri Sage Lifecrafter, which is a very underwhelming mono green token creation commander. 1 green mana human artificer, 1/2. Pay 2 and a green, tap, create a 1/1 colorless servo artifact creature token, and you can pay 4 and a green, tap, create an XX colorless construct artifact creature token, where X is the number of creatures you control. So again, just a very underwhelming mono green token creation commander that I think has gotten a lot of support in recent time. And again, obviously the really powerful, popular commanders that are creating tokens in green are also getting that support. I suppose if you have a green and white commander, you're going to get a whole lot of support there. But I'm shedding some light on some of these less popular ones. If you want to go after them now, there is a little bit more support to make them a little more viable. Let's talk about Gadrick the Crown Scourge, 2 and a red, dragon 5/4 with flying. Gadrick the Crown Scourge can't attack unless you control 4 or more artifacts. At the beginning of your end step, create a treasure token for each non-token creature that died this turn. So I think people know why I'm talking about this one. It's because we have gotten an absolute ton of treasure support in the last year. I mean, you just look at Zorn and Academy Manufactor. Those are 2 cards that didn't exist when Gadrick came out, and so Gadrick didn't have a lot of support for what was going on. Both of those cards make him a lot better, and then we've got a whole bunch more in the last year, a whole bunch more, especially with the last few sets, just in mono red, doing the treasure token theme, also the sacrifice artifact theme. There's a lot of support there for Gadrick, so that might be a commander that you guys might want to revisit. Captain Lannery Storm is another one, even more unpopular, really unpopular commander. 2 and a red human pirate, 2/2 with haste. Whenever Captain Lannery Storm attacks, create a treasure token, and whenever you sack a treasure token, it gets +1/+0 until end of turn. So again, 2 abilities dealing with treasure tokens, and there's been so much treasure support in the last year, even just in mono red, that this might be a commander you might want to take a look at. Let's talk about Hoffrey Ghost Forge, another commander that's not super unpopular. However, it's not nearly as popular as I thought it would be. I thought this guy had so many interesting things going on that he would be one of the most popular Boros commanders. I thought top 3 for sure. He's not even close. He's not even in the top 10 actually, which really surprises me. He's still pretty popular, but he's doing so much that, again, because we've had a lot of different archetype support come out in the last year, a lot of the things he's doing is easily supported. So of course, spirits you control get +1/+1 and have trample and haste. So I'm sure there's been a lot of great spirits, particularly in Neon Dynasty, that came out that would fit in this theme. More so though, whenever a non-token creature you control dies, exile it. If you do, create a token that's a copy of that creature, except it's a spirit in addition to its other types, and has, whenever this creature leaves the battlefield, return the exiled card to your graveyard. There's so much going on there that you really need to look at some of the stuff that has come out to see if it supports it. So again, we're doing the token theme here, right? So any of that white token support is going to fit here. Benny Brax, for example, right? You can throw a Benny Brax in a Hoffrey deck, your creature dies, you get the token copy, now you've created a token and you'll get to draw a card on the end step. You can do it on your opponent's turns as well, right? So great fit there. Also, I think the Blitz mechanic fits really nicely in Hoffrey Ghost Forge because your creature's coming into play with the Blitz mechanic, it's going to get sacrificed, and when it does, of course, it's going to die, and then you will get a token copy. So Blitz mechanic, which I think is a really interesting, neat mechanic that can fit in a few different decks, fits really well in Hoffrey. Speaking of which, Judith the Scourge Diva is another commander where the Blitz mechanic fits really, really nicely, right? And most of the cards are in black and red that have Blitz. And whenever a non-token creature you control dies, Judith deals 1 damage to any target. So the Blitz mechanic really works nicely in Judith, also really works nicely in Jury Master of the Review, black and a red again. So a lot of those Blitz cards are going to fit in here. Human Shaman 1/1, whenever you sacrifice a permanent, put a +1/+1 counter on Jury Master of the Review. And of course, you are sacrificing them, right? With the Blitz mechanic, you're going to be sacrificing them at the end of turn. So that is going to trigger your Jury. So the Blitz mechanic, again, might want to take a look at some of these commanders that are liking the whole sacrificing thing or liking the whole my creatures are dying thing, because the Blitz mechanic fits there really, really nicely. Also fits nicely in Cedrus the Traitor King. And this is the commander I'm going to end off with because, man, this guy, I always thought this guy was a phenomenal commander. He used to be really, really popular, has, tapered off quite a bit, is still reasonably, in sort of middling, I guess. I have not seen a Sidrus deck in a long, long time. I made one for a patron of mine a little while ago. That's about the only time I've seen him. He's gotten so much support lately. And again, the Blitz mechanic, fantastic fit here, right? You're going to have that creature enter the battlefield. It will sacrifice, go to your graveyard, and then, of course, you can unearth it. So the Blitz mechanic fits really, really nicely with Sidrus. There's also been a little bit of the graveyard support, like Fuming Effigy, for example, which came out in Strixhaven. Whenever one or more cards leave your graveyard, Fuming Effigy deals 1 damage to each opponent. Obviously, with the unearth, you're going to have creatures leaving your graveyard. Tormod as well, right? You're going to have creatures leaving your graveyard all the time, so every time you do, it will trigger your Tormod and you'll get that 2/2 zombie. Lots of cards from Battle for Baldur's Gate that we just got that are great fits here, like Displacer Kitten is a fantastic one. 3 and a blue, Cat Beast 2/2. Whenever you cast a non-creature spell, exile up to 1 target non-land permanent you control, then return that card to the battlefield under its owner's control. Talked about this in my top 20 from the set. It's a phenomenal card that's going to go in a lot of decks. Fits great with Sidrus, right? Because that unearth ability is very unique in the way it's worded, right? You're going to exile that creature at the beginning of the next end step, or if it would leave the battlefield, right? You can't really get around that. If you sacrifice your unearthed creature, it will get exiled instead, but with a blink effect, it's already getting exiled. So there's no replacement necessary, right? Having a reusable blink effect like Displacer Kitten in a Sidrus deck is fantastic because now I can unearth a creature from my graveyard, big scary beater, and then on my second main phase, I can cast a non-creature spell, just a mana rock, whatever, exile that creature, then it will come back into play and it's considered to be a new creature, and now it permanently stays in play. So that's going to be a fantastic fit in Sidrus decks. You could also throw in Shadowheart Dark Justicar in there, pay 1 and a black and tap, sacrifice another creature, draw X cards, where X is that creature's power. So now again, I have a way to use that creature, but that's going to get exiled anyway, right? I unearth a giant scary creature, I swing with it, and then before it gets exiled, I can just sacrifice it and draw a ton of cards. So that's a great fit in there as well. Sidrus has gotten a ton of great support in the last year. A lot of commanders have, right? So basically the point of this video is we've gotten a lot of support, particularly in certain archetypes, creating tokens, counters, treasures, stuff like that. So for anyone who's interested in doing something a little bit different, building some of those underwhelming commanders, it might be worth it for you to go back and look at some of these commanders that are dealing with those themes that didn't have a whole lot of support now, but have gotten a lot better because of some of the cards that we've gotten in the last year or so. What underwhelming commanders have gotten a lot better recently that I didn't mention? Let me know in the comments below, but that is it for today, and thanks for tuning in.